Hello, dear students. Welcome to this lecture. Today, our topic of deliberation is development of philosophy during ancient India. Before we discuss about today's topic, let me briefly introduce you to the main objectives. They are to know about the meaning of philosophy in ancient India, to know about various stages in the development of philosophy, to know about the various schools of philosophy, to know about the Astika and Nastika school of philosophy, and finally, to know about the impact of religion on philosophy. Dear students, first let us start with the introduction. Philosophy comes up in India as an inquiry into the secrecy of life and reality. In the Indian tradition, philosophy means darshana or tattva. Darshana means to realize, while tattva means reality or ultimate reality. The Indian civilization has been one of the oldest and longest traditions of philosophical thinking in the entire world. The image of what we call Indian thought is enormous and diverse, spanning hundreds and thousands of years, with a wide range and diversity of philosophical schools and traditions. The ancient Indian philosophy referred to various traditions of philosophical thought that originated in Indian subcontinent in different times at different places. The schools or systems of Indian philosophy are divided in two broad classes, namely orthodox or what we call Astic or Vedic, and heterodox, Nastic or non-Vedic. To the first group belong the six chief philosophical systems, popularly known as Shat Darshana. On the other side, there are three classes of heterodox systems of the materialists like the Charvikas, the Buddhists, and the Jains. They are called heterodox because they do not believe in the authority of the Vedas. Over centuries, India's intellectual search for truth has come to be represented by six schools of philosophy. The six schools of philosophy that emerged and developed during ancient India were Vishishka, Nyaya, Samkhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, and Vedanta. According to the tradition, these six schools of philosophy are believed to have been founded by the great scholars, sages like Konda, Gotama, Kapila, Patanjali, Jamini, and Vyasa, respectively. These are regarded as orthodox or astika, not because they believe in God, but because they accept the authority of the Vedas. The Mimamsa and the Samkhya do not believe in God as the creator of the world, yet they are called orthodox because they believe in the authoritativeness of the Vedas. The richness and impact of such philosophies can be understood from the fact that they still guide the scholarly discussions in the country at present as well. The six systems of philosophy were developed over many generations with contributions made by individual thinkers and scholars. Though the six schools of philosophies are attributed to individual persons with a difference of opinion in their thought, but they had an underlying harmony in their understanding of truth, though they seem distant from each other. Now, let me talk about origin and development of philosophy in ancient India. In the earlier phases of human life on this planet, when man was struck with wonder or the natural phenomena, or when he found complex and conflicting phenomena in life and was filled with discontentment at the existing order of things, It was the beginning of philosophy. The origin of Indian philosophy may be easily traced in the Vedas. The Vedas are the earliest available records of Indian literature. The Upanishads are the foundation of Indian philosophy, which teach spiritual monism and mysticism. The systems of Indian philosophy are systematic speculations on the nature of the reality in harmony with the teachings of Upanishads, which contain various aspects of the truth. They aim at the knowledge of the reality with a view to transforming and spiritualizing human life. Philosophical knowledge does not aim at merely satisfying our theoretical and speculative interest, but also at realizing the highest truth in life. Indian philosophy is intensely spiritual and emphasizes the need of practical realization of truth. As philosophy aims at knowledge of truth, it is termed in Indian literature as the vision of truth or darshana. The word darshana means vision and also the instrument of vision. It stands for the direct, immediate, and innate vision of reality, the actual perception of truth, and also includes the means which lead to this realization. See the self is the keynote of all schools of Indian philosophy, and this is the reason why most of the schools of Indian philosophy are intimately associated with different religious sects. Now we will be talking about different schools of philosophy. First, we will take up the Astika or the 6 schools of Indian philosophy. The first to discuss is the Visheshka. Kannad is the founder of Visheshka philosophy. The term Visheshka is derived from the term Vishesa, which means particularity or distinguishing feature. The Visheshka philosophy is pluralistic realism which emphasizes that diversity is the soul of the universe. According to it, the entire universe is reduced to 7 padrathas. Padratha literally means the meaning of a word or the object signified by a word. All objects of knowledge or all authentic come under Padratha. Padratha means an object which can be thought and named. Originally, the Visheshka believed in the 6 categories, and the 7th, that of bhava or negation, was added later on. The atomic theory of the Visheshka explains that part of the world which is non-eternal, that is, subject to origin and destruction in time. The eternal constituents of the universe, namely the 4 kinds of atoms and the 5 substances of akasa, space, time, mind, and soul, do not come within the purview of their atomic theory, because these can neither be created nor destroyed. On the other hand, all composite objects beginning within a dyad or the first compound of only 2 atoms are non-eternal. So the atomic theory explains the order of creation and destruction of these non-eternal objects. All composite objects are constituted by the combination of atoms and destroyed through their separation. According to the Visheshka thinkers, all the composite objects of the universe are composed of the atoms of earth, water, air, and fire. Hence, the view of the Visheshka concerning creation is called atomism. The eternal category of substance, namely ether, time, mind, space, earth, and physical elements, are neither created nor destroyed. The world is created and destroyed by God according to the moral wildness of individual souls and for the proper realization of their moral destiny. The next school is Nyaya. The Nyaya system of thought is one of the Vedic system of Indian philosophy. It was founded by Gautam in 2nd century BCE. R. Akshapada, who wrote the Nyaya Sutra. Nyaya is also known as the Akshapada system and Nyaya Vidya. Gautama is also well known as the founder of ancient Indian logic. So, Nyaya is also called Tarka Shastra, the science of reasoning, and Anvikshki, the science of critical study. The Sanskrit term Nyaya is understood to mean argumentation or reasoning. It shows that the Nyaya system followed a predominantly intellectualistic and analytical method in its philosophical investigations. It is also known as Hitu Vidya or the science of causes or reasons. Vatsayana, a 4th century AD scholar, has written a commentary on the Nyaya Sutras of the Gautama. There are also commentaries upon commentaries written by other Nyaya philosophers. The Nyaya system is divided into two schools, Parisina Nyaya, ancient school, and Navya Nyaya, modern school. Ganesha, a 10th century scholar, is the founder of the modern school. The Nyaya philosophy accepts 4 sources of knowledge. Number 1, perception. Number 2, inference. Number 3, verbal testimony or authority. And the 4th, judgment. Gautama is the founder of this system and also of the ancient Indian logic. His concept of source of knowledge is broad-based. It accepts reason and experience as important source of knowledge. Truth is defined in terms of correspondence with fact, and the test of the truth is pragmatic, that is, fruitful activity. The next school was Samkhya. Samkhya is undoubtedly one of the oldest systems of Indian philosophy. Kapila is the founder of this system. The word Samkhya means right knowledge as well as number. The system is predominantly intellectual and theoretical. Right knowledge is the knowledge of the separation of the Purusha from the Prakriti. Yoga, as the counterpart of the Samkhya, means action or practice and tells us how the theoretical metaphysical teachings of Samkhya might be realized in actual practice. Thus, Samkhya Yoga forms one complete system, the former being the theoretical while the later being the practical aspect of the same teaching. Samkhya is dualistic realism. It is dualistic because of its doctrine of two ultimate realities, that is Prakriti, that means matter, and Purusha, which means self or spirit. Samkhya is realism in that it holds that both matter and spirit are equally real. With regard to the self, Samkhya is pluralistic because of its teaching that Purusha is not one but many. The Samkhya recognizes not only two kinds of ultimate realities, namely Purusha and Prakriti. The history of the evolved universe is a play of 24 principles, of which Prakrit is the first. The 5 gross elements are the last, and the 13 organs and the 5 tanmatras are the intermediate ones. The next school of philosophy is Mimaskas. The term Mimasa means inquiry or investigation. There are two Vedic philosophical systems which are known as Purva Mimsa or Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa or Vedanta. The former is also known as Karma Mimamsa or Dharma Mimamsa and the later as Jana Mimamsa or Brahma Mimamsa. Sage Jemani is the founder of Mimamsa system of philosophy. Jamani wrote Mimamsa Sutras. Sabra Swami wrote a commentary on the sutras. According to them, holy Vedas are impersonal texts. They are neither written by the God nor by any human author. They are infallible authority in regard to obligatory duties. One of the presuppositions of this approach is that human mind is liable to error. We cannot rely upon individual minds, so they rationally try to justify authoritarian method. The special feature of Mimamsa philosophy is that it does not accept God as the revealer or author of Vedas or even as the creator of universe. It claims that the impersonal self-existent, essentially valid, authorless. Vedas are the only authority or verbal testimony in regard to religious duties, rites, and ceremonial rituals. In other matters, Gemini accepts perception and inference as a source of knowledge. Action is the final import of the Vedas, which are essentially valid. The Vedas stand for a forum of uttered words and are self-existent. The relation between words and its meanings is natural and therefore necessary and eternal. Even language is not a creation of human or even of divine mind, but reason is an important instrument for understanding the import of the Vedas. The main objectives of Mimamsa system are to establish the unquestionable authority of the Vedas as the source of all knowledge about dharma, that is, religion and ceremonial duties or rituals, and to explain the true meaning of these holy books. According to them, Vedas are self-revealed texts and therefore authorless. The next school of philosophy that we are going to discuss is Vedantic. The Vedanta deals with the nature and knowledge of Brahma. Its central concept is Brahma. It systemizes the teachings of the Upanishads. The school of Advaita Vedanta was founded by Shankara. The Vedas are probably the oldest scriptures in the recorded history of man. They are the sources of sacred knowledge and wisdom of orthodox Hinduism in its various forms. Veda is etymologically related to Vid, meaning knowledge. The Vedas are regarded by Hindus as divine in origin and not the work of human authors. Accordingly, they are looked upon as timely and eternal. Vedanta literally means the end of Vedas. Vedanta is originally the name given to Upanishad because they are the end of Vedic literature and also because they impart ultimate form of Vedic knowledge. The word Upanishad is derived from the root sad, which means to sit down, to destroy and to loosen. Upa means nearby and ni, disciple near his teacher in a devoted manner to receive instruction about the highest reality, and it is used by the Upanishads in this sense. The system of Vedanta philosophy as advocated by Shankara is called Advaita or non-dualism. The system of Advaita Vedanta may be summarized in half a verse, which runs as, and I quote, Brahma is the only reality. The world is ultimately false, and the individual soul is non-different from Brahma. Brahma and Atma are synonymous terms. The world is the creation of Maya. Unquote. According to Shankara, ultimate reality is Atma or Brahma, which is pure consciousness or consciousness of pure self, which is devoid of all attributes and all categories of intellect. Brahma is the only reality. It is absolutely indeterminate and non-dual. It is beyond speech and mind. It is indescribable because no description of Brahma can be complete. The best description of Brahma is through the negative formula of niti niti, nor not this, not this. The system of Vedanta philosophy as advocated by Madhva is known as Dvaita Vedanta. He is a staunch advocate of dualism. He upholds through going dualism between the world and Brahma. Madhva recognizes two kinds of reality, independent and dependent. God is the independent reality, while individual souls and the world are dependent realities. Madhva advocates the reality of fivefold differences between soul and God, between soul and soul, between soul and matter, between God and matter, and between matter and matter. Madhva's philosophy is a philosophy of difference. He recognizes five fundamentals and absolute distinctions. Nature is eternal and atomic. Consciousness and bliss are inherent to them, but owing to their past karma, self become knotted with bodies and suffer pain and misery. Bhakti Yoga is the sole path to liberation according to this philosophy. The next school of philosophy is yoga. The yoga philosophy speaks about the theory and practice for the realization of the ultimate truth concerning human being and the world. In Vedanta, yoga is understood as union, that is spiritual union of the individual soul with the supreme soul. This view is not explained clearly. Patanjali, who is the founder of the yoga system, says yoga is a spiritual effort to attain perfection through the control of sense organs, gross body, subtle mind, intellect, and ego. It guides to achieve the highest wisdom through spiritual realization. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are the first and foremost systematic and authoritative presentations of yoga in both its theoretical and practical aspects. Followed by Patanjali, Vyasa, Yogbhasha, and Vachpati Mishra's Tattva Vishradai are the good additions to the yoga philosophy. These two works are treated as commentaries on the Yoga Sutras. The yoga philosophy is closely associated with Samkhya philosophy. The yoga presents a practical path for the realization of self, while as the Samkhya emphasizes the attainment of knowledge of self by means of concentration and meditation. Thus, it would be incorrect to state that yoga is the practice and Samkhya is its theory. The Gita says that yoga and Samkhya are the practical and theoretical sides of the same system. Although there are many similarities found between Samkhya and yoga system, yet a few dissimilarities are highlighted. The similarities are both the schools uphold that liberation can be attained through knowledge, and to attain this knowledge, it requires the power to control body, mind, senses, intellect, and ego. Yoga accepts three paramanas which are agreed by the Samkhya. These three paramanas are perception, inference, and verbal testimony. There are 25 metaphysical principles as viewed by the Samkhya, and it is agreed by the Yoga. The dissimilarities lie when Yoga states that there is only one and one Purusha is known as Supreme Self, who is eternal, ever present, beyond time and space. Rejecting this view, Samkhya expresses that there are many Purushas and hence there are innumerable number of selves. So after completing with the Astika school of philosophy, now let me discuss about the Nastika school of philosophy, and the first school we will take up is the Charvika philosophy. One of the important counter movements in India that challenged the authority of Vedas and questioned its teachings is Charvika philosophy. It sought to unsettle most of the traditionally held views and beliefs such as the existence of God, soul, and life after death. That is why it was called heterodox school of philosophy. Charvaka is a non-Vedic Indian materialistic school of philosophy named after a sage called Charvaka, the founder of the system, according to a popular view. But some think that Charvaka was a prominent disciple of Brihaspati, the actual founder of the school. According to the scholars, the origin of the school can be traced back to post-Upanishadic period. The school would have been born between 600 to 400 BCE. The Buddhist texts of this period mentions several heterodox teachers such as Sanjaya, the skeptic, Ajikta, the materialistic, Purana Kashyapa, the indifferentistic, and Kosala, the fatalistic, and Kathayana, whose ideas in some way or the other come close to the views of the Charvikas. It is probably in this ambience of uncertainty, materialism, and nihilism that Charvika philosophy would have originated. It must be noted that it is around the same time that the atomists and sophists became popular in Greece. Though it is a remote possibility that the atomists and the sophists and the Charvikas would have influenced one another, it is evident that all these shared certain common views. But Chattoppadhyaya, who has written extensively on Lokyata and Charvika schools, hold that already in pre-Buddhist texts of Chandra Upanishad of 7th century BCE, there is a reference to a view identifying body with the self, the philosophical position of Charvikas. But it must be noted that the text does not mention the word Lokyatas or Charvikas and attributes the view to the Asuras. According to T.M.P. Mahadevan, even in the earliest text of Rigveda, there are references to non-conformists, agonistic, and critics of Vedas. But Kautilya, in the 4th century BCE, speaks of Lokyatas, though only once, but in the context in which he speaks of them seems to indicate that they had an established system already that time, like that of the Samkhya and Yoga. In the 2nd century BC, Patanjali speaks of the Lokyatas and of Bugri as their supporter. The text of 2nd century CE, namely the Kama Sutra of Vatsyayana and the Nyaya Sutra of Gautama, one of the earliest texts of Nyaya system, contain the views of Lokyata Sutra and have an extensive discussion mainly on two topics very commonly attributed to Charvikas. Besides this, the Buddhist sources such as Piyasi Sutana and Samanaphala Sutta, written around 4th to 5th century CE, speaks about the views of materialism, and the later text speaks of heretics of Buddha's time including Ajita Kishambali, who is a representative of extreme materialism and regarded as follower of Charvika school. Charvika philosophy is a heterodox school of Indian philosophy. They do not believe in the authority of the Vedas. Materialism accepts matter as the ultimate reality. It rejects the existence of otherworldly entities like God, soul, heaven, life before death or after death, etc. Charvika philosophy focuses mainly on these three issues, that is, metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics. The next philosophy was the Buddhist philosophy. Buddhism, as you all know, is a non theistic philosophy whose tenets are not especially concerned with the existence or non existence of God. Buddha considered the world as a full of misery and considered a man's duty to seek liberation from this painful world. He strongly criticized blind faith in the traditional scriptures like the Vedas. Buddhist philosophy and doctrines based on the teachings of Buddha give meaningful insights about reality and human existence. Buddha was primarily an ethical teacher rather than a philosopher. His central concern was to show man the way out of suffering and not one constructing a philosophical theory. Therefore, Buddha's teachings lays great emphasis on the practical matter of conduct which leads to liberation. For Buddha, the root of cause of suffering is ignorance, and in order to eliminate suffering, we need to know the nature of existence. The philosophical implications of Buddha's teaching must be taken into serious consideration. The philosophical system of Buddhism does not assume a systematic form. We cannot make a sharp distinction between the philosophical, religious, and ethical notions of Buddhism. The reason behind it is that the philosophical notions were developed in the background of ethical and religious notions. The Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, which basically constitute the main philosophy or the background of the philosophy of Buddhism, are: number one, life is full of suffering. According to the first noble truth, all forms of existence are subject to suffering. For Buddha, it is a universal truth. All known and unknown facts and forms of life are associated with suffering. The second is suffering has a cause. Everything in this cosmos has a cause, and nothing exists and happens without a cause. If this is the cause, suffering should also have a cause. Buddhism explains suffering through a chain of 12 causes and effects, commonly known as the doctrine of dependent origination. If suffering has a cause, the seeker has to destroy this cause to stop suffering. So, desire has to be extinguished to stop suffering. Nirvana is the state of being without suffering. It is a state of supreme happiness and bliss. And there are ways to destroy suffering. The ways to destroy suffering consist of practice of eightfold virtues such as right view, right aspiration, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right effort, right awareness, and right concentration. In the practice of all these virtues, one has to avoid extreme and follow the middle path, or what we generally refer as Eightfold Path of Buddhism. The last philosophical tradition to discuss is the Jain philosophy. The Jain Dharma or Jainism is one of the oldest religions of the world. According to Dr. K.C. Sugani, and I quote, it represents the continuation of indigenous Sharmic cultures which is as old as Vedas themselves so far as literary evidences go. Though the archaeological evidences takes shamanism far back to Harappan civilization, which is regarded as non-Vedic in origin and outlook. Unquote. The Jain system, like the Buddhists, is non-theistic. It does not acknowledge the existence of creator of God. Another important feature is that it is pluralistic system. The souls are many, infinite in number. Moksha is not absorption into the supreme, but the attainment of a perfect, luminous and blessed soul, which is without body and without actions. The religious philosophy of Jainism teaches that there are 9 truths or realities. They are soul, non-soul, merit, sin, influx, stoppage, bondage, shedding, and finally liberation. To conclude, we can say that the ancient period of Indian philosophy is the period of composition of Vedas and the Upanishads. It is also the period of the growth of the anti-Vedic movements like Buddhism, Jainism and Charvikas. The classical period of Indian philosophy is the period of rise of the philosophical systems or Shaddarshanas. So dear students, it was all about today's lecture regarding development of philosophy during ancient India. Hope you have understood it well. Thank you